It looks like we are live. So we have an exciting, hopefully informative episode for you today. This evening, we'll be talking about human animal hybrids. We'll talk about the real cause of rising gas prices. We'll have an expose from our friends at Project Veritas, an expose of the New York Times. And we'll end with a fact check of President Joe Biden. So, we're going to start off with this story from NPR last week. Let's see if I can get this up here. Last week, I'm going to pull up this article from NPR. There was a man who had he had to receive a heart transplant. He was on the heart transplant list. And one thing that he did, he out of the kindness of his heart, he decided to forego adding himself to the heart transplant list. And what he did instead was he opted in to be a part of an experimental program where they would put a pig heart in him in the hopes that that it would sustain him. So I'm going to pause it right there. What I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to try and share this link with my wife because perhaps she'll be able to share it. Perhaps we'll get some traction on this thing, and perhaps I'll do more of these. This is a really interesting story. It is actually, no, that's not the truth. It's not interesting. It is terrifying. It is quite frightening. Let's see. So I'm texting my wife. All right. So let's get back into this. I'm going to share this or just read this one snippet from the article. Scientists modified the animal, speaking of the pig, to combat organ rejection. Ladies and gentlemen, this is stuff of conspiracy theories. I wish this was a conspiracy theory, but the fact is that our medical community is creating, or the scientific community is creating animal human hybrids. It was one thing 20 years ago when they tried to clone the sheep, and they cloned the sheep. They've been cloning animals ever since then. But what they're doing now is they are creating animal human hybrids. Let me continue reading this. It says prior attempts at such transplants, or xenotransplantation, as they call it, have failed largely because patients' bodies rapidly rejected the animal organ. No crap. We are God-created beings. God did not create us to be a hybrid with an animal. God created us in his image. He didn't create us in the image of a sheep, of a pig, of a monkey. We were created in the image of God. It says this time the Maryland surgeons used a heart from a gene-edited pig. Scientists had modified the animal to remove pig genes that trigger the hyper-fast rejection and add human genes to help the body accept the organ. Ladies and gentlemen, NPR states, without even hiding or trying to cover it up, the scientists added human genes to the pig to help the human body accept the organ. I have to say, this is, as I said, quite frightening. You know, it's funny. There's a widely known, somewhat controversial somewhat controversial journalist, radio host Alex Jones. You may love him, you may hate him. The funny thing about Alex Jones is that a lot of people on the left will call him a conspiracy theorist. But the funny thing about Alex Jones is he is more accurate than the mainstream media is. All of the things that he has, sorry, I'm not going to say all of the things. A lot of the things that he has stated on his reports that many attack him for because they seem like conspiracy theories, they have come true. One example that I love is on it wasn't his it was on a recent one of his recent episodes of the Tim Pool IRL podcast. And the great thing about Alex Jones, he always comes prepared. He comes with his resources, and he mentioned the fact that forgive me if I have this right. I believe it was it was one of our presidents. I can't remember if it was Abraham Lincoln or George Washington. It might have even been Thomas. No, I believe it was George Washington. George Washington was writing, and feel free to fact check me on this. George Washington wrote to one of his associates about his involvement in the Illuminati. And a lot of people in the media like to talk about how the Illuminati is a conspiracy. It's imaginary. It's something that people make up. But the fact is, and this is in the National Archive, George Washington is writing to his associate about his involvement in the Illuminati. That's a totally separate story. We're here talking about animal human hybrids. NPR talking about how scientists modified the animal and added human genes. And this is something Alex Jones, radio host, journalist, he released some disturbing reports a couple years ago about these animal human chimera. Now, I'll be honest, Alex Jones, he can be a little eccentric. He can be a little hyperbolic, but the fact still stands. He was right. Emily, let me pull up this report from Alex Jones really quick. Give me one moment. Again, folks, I have no producer out of frame that's pulling these shots up for me. I'm doing this all by myself. This is about 2 years ago. Alex Jones on his show, on his network InfoWars, breaking human babies spliced with mice to create demonic new life forms. Now, is that a little hyperbolic? Perhaps, but the fact is, this is no longer the thing of conspiracy theories. Scientists are creating animal human hybrids. There was a report, I believe it came out last year during COVID, that there was a university that was purchasing aborted fetuses that were not dead yet. University purchasing aborted fetuses that were still alive. Ladies and gentlemen, this is disturbing. I'm not going to dive too much more into this. The goal of this show is just to give you some quick updates on what's going on in the world. I'm just going to touch on a few news stories. The hope is that this will be a brief broadcast. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We'll see. I want to get into gas prices. Speaking of Alex Jones, I have this report from InfoWars. This is again the Alex Jones show. And you know what? This is a video, so I can't show the video. I'm going to pull up this chart. It's from the EIA. It's the United States Energy Information Administration. Guys, hopefully I'll be able to figure out some quicker ways to get these up for you. This is the average gas prices in the United States for the last 20 years. This is going back to the Clinton administration. And you'll see, for the last 20 years, there's been a steady incline. During the Clinton administration, over the course of his 8 years, the price of gas increased about 50 cents per gallon. There's some spikes, there's some dips. Gas prices, they're affected by a number of things. They can be affected by politics. They can be affected by global economics, by global relations. We'll see in the Bush administration, there was an increase of really from the beginning of his term to the end of his term, only an increase of about a quarter per gallon. Now, there was a pretty big spike there around 2008, 2009, and then it took a pretty sharp dip when Obama came into office. Now, during Obama's administration, gas prices took a pretty big leap, about $2 per gallon. If I recall, he did make an effort to rein that in, and we can see by the end of his term, by the end of his 2 terms, gas prices had only risen again about another 25 cents per gallon. And then we enter the era of Donald Trump. The thing about Donald Trump was he is a businessman. Love him, hate him. He came in with the goal of disrupting the government, disrupting the status quo. He came in to throw a wrench in the government machine, and boy, did he. This is what's fascinating. Over the last 20 years, Donald Trump was the only administration where at the end of his term, gas prices were lower than when he entered office. Now, it's 2022, it's March 16th. Joe Biden has been in office for just over a year and 2 months. And we see this incredible spike. Now, the media has been spinning this to say that, oh, it's all about Putin. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at this curve, if you look at this this graph line, the spike was at the very beginning of the Biden administration, long before any issues with Russia, long before any issues with Ukraine. In fact, before the issues with Ukraine, gas prices started to come down just a smidge. And it wasn't until Russia invaded Ukraine that we saw it begin to go up again. Ladies and gentlemen, the Biden administration, the gaslighter in chief, Joe Biden, He is the cause, and the radical progressive Democrats on the left, they are the cause of our rising gas prices. It is the Democrats who have a supermajority in Congress. It is the radical, I can't even say Joe Biden's radical. He's asleep. His radical vice president, who, funny enough, he more often than not calls her the president. Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen, is the cause of our rising gas prices. What's funny about this, though, um, our gaslighter in chief, Joe Biden, there was a report. It was from InfoWars. Joe Biden was reaching out to Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates to try and negotiate better gas prices, negotiate the United States acquiring more gas, more oil. And let's see. Let me pull this up just because it's funny. The Saudis and those in the UAE refused to take Joe Biden's calls. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the sad reality we are in. The world, the rest of the Western world, the rest of the world governments, they do not respect Joe Biden. He is old. He is in cognitive decline. The fact of the matter is, he's incompetent. And it is sad, the fact that our president is not able to collaborate with other countries because of their lack of respect. Because of the lack of respect from the international community, our president is not able to get anything done. That was not the case with President Donald Trump. President Donald Trump, again, whether you like him or not, he had the respect of the international community. They may not have liked his style, but he spoke to China. He spoke to Xi Jinping. He spoke to Kim Jong-un in North Korea. He spoke to Vladimir Putin of Russia. And you know what? He put the fear of God in them. They knew that if they messed with the United States, they knew that if they messed with Donald Trump, that there would be hell to pay. I believe there was a report when Donald Trump was in office. Donald Trump actually said this in the media, that he got off the phone with, I believe it was Russia. Feel free to fact check me. And he told them that if they mess with us, that he would nuke Moscow. Now, if that is not ballsy, then I don't know what is. I want to move on to another story here. This is quite an amazing story. Project Veritas is let's see, how would you? Project Veritas is what is that name? What is the term? Oh, forgive me. News company are famous for their undercover work, for their undercover undercover reporting and exposés. And there was they just released a new expose this last week. I'm going to pull it up here on my screen. I thank you guys for tuning in, for sticking in there. I promise as I continue doing this, it will get smoother. I'll have smoother graphics. If there's anyone who would like to volunteer to be a part of this show, my hope is that it will be a weekly update, what's going on in the news. All right, so into this Project Veritas story. Project Veritas just released a new expose titled Unmasking. Actually, sorry, I think this might be my title for it. Unmasking the New York Times. And a bombshell video released Tuesday, March 8th. An undercover journalist at Project Veritas published this report. In it, Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times correspondent Matthew Rosenberg spoke of the January 6th protests. I'm going to pull up just this one little clip. Let's see. Man, I really need to figure out a better system for this. I realized there is a better way, and I just didn't have time to get it set up. So I appreciate your patience as I get these graphics up. We want this to be a high quality broadcast. So if you enjoy this so far, why don't you go ahead and give that like button a little tickle. Hit the share button if you know of someone who would like a quick news update at the beginning of the week. If you enjoy the content, if you enjoy the type of news that we are sharing, then go ahead and give this a share. Pulitzer Prize winning New York Times reporter Matthew Rosenberg contradicts his own January 6th reporting, saying there were a ton of FBI informants among the people who attacked the Capitol, calling the January 6th media coverage an overreaction. The FBI was involved. The event was not organized despite ongoing narrative. This is wild. There have been hundreds of America-loving patriots who've been arrested because they were peacefully protesting on January 6th, protesting an election that they felt was unfair, an election that they felt was stolen. Whatever your belief was, the fact of the matter is, this Pulitzer Prize winning New York Times reporter, Matthew Rosenberg, admits that the media has overreacted, that there was no organization, that the FBI was involved in stoking the flames of this protest. If you look at, let's see, did I write this down? Let's see, I may not have gotten, gosh darn, I did not get the facts. I was looking up the arrests and the charges for those who were arrested on January 6th at the peaceful protests at the Capitol. And would you guess how many people were actually arrested with the charges being insurrection? 0. There were 0 people on January 6th who are arrested for insurrection. The vast majority of the charges were illegal picketing. Yes, there were a small few individuals who were arrested for assault on officers, but the fact of the matter is, zero officers died on January 6th, or as a result of January 6th. The one person, yes, the one person that was killed on January 6th was a female veteran named Ashley Babbitt. And what we are seeing, and what the the God blessed journalists at Project Veritas have uncovered, is the fact that the media, the mainstream media, the lamestream media, the corporate controlled, government controlled uh, media, they have been involved in crafting this narrative, which was made to demonize American patriots, patriotic, America loving, uh, everyday Joes. Well, I just want to bring up one last story, and I'll wrap this thing up. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope that this is informative for you. Um, I'm going to wrap this up after this last story. Let's see, is this the clip that I want? Ah, yes. One thing that I aim to do on this show is I want to make sure that I give you the most honest information. I will be as forthcoming as I can, and I hope to tell it like it is. This is a story from CNN, from the corporate news network, the Chinese uh, Chinese Communist News Network. Out of Texas, Texas confirms they are investigating. They have 9 open investigations of transgender minors receiving gender affirming health care. I hope that on this broadcast, this channel, um, that I never have to use that word again, transgender. In fact, it is my opinion and my belief that there is no such thing as someone who is transgender. We were created by God, male and female, and we stay that way. It doesn't matter how you change your physical appearance. It doesn't matter how you act. The fact is that in our genetics, in our DNA, you have either 2 X chromosomes or you have an X and a Y chromosome, and that is what determines your gender. It doesn't matter how you feel. It doesn't matter um, what the media tells you, what your friends tell you. The fact of the matter is, you were born either male or female, determined by God Himself. So there is no such thing as transgender. This is what's amazing. Texas has opened 9 alleged abuse investigations of minors receiving gender affirming health care. Patrick Crimmins, a Department of Family and Protective Services spokesman, confirmed to CNN. Civil rights groups said that they were aware of at least 3 families facing investigation. This is what we need to see in more of our states and more of our districts is um, the government actually seeing what this is, and it is child abuse. If you are allowing your child to get life altering surgeries, life altering services, because of how they feel, because of the peer pressure that they're receiving, and you don't tell your child the truth and you don't do what is best for your child, which is to get them into real therapy, not woke therapy, it's child abuse. And it's great to see that there are states um, who are starting to do things about this. Um, this brings me to one last clip. There's a few states over the last couple of years that have been doing great work for their constituents. Florida, they haven't been perfect. Sorry, Texas hasn't been perfect. Florida has been, gosh, near perfect. All right, just one more second here. Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida. Florida passes the Parental Rights and Education Bill. Opponents call the Don't Say Gay bill. The great thing about this legislation is that it not only protects our children, but it puts the power back into the hands of the parents. There was a report here out of California recently, actually, a few reports of teachers who were um, teaching other. There were teachers at a teachers conference in the gay haven of Palm Springs, at a teachers conference, that were teaching other teachers how to start gay clubs in schools, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and teaching them how to do it in a way to where um, parents wouldn't find out. They were teaching kids how to hide this from their parents. That is abhorrent. And those teachers should be fired. Those teachers should be arrested. They should be prosecuted for child abuse. Opponents of the bill and it's say that it's been used as a vehicle to marginalize and attack gay people. I'm not going to use the term LGBTQ because most of those terms don't mean anything. Um, People may be attracted to the opposite sex. Okay, you're gay. Um, but to call yourself, as I already addressed, trans, it's not real. It's made up. Queer, okay. I know lots of weird people. If you want to call yourself queer, that is up to you. But I'm not going to acknowledge the fact that this is a legitimate community. Um, some of the things in this bill, which are pretty great, is not only does it um, prevent teachers from talking about sex and gender to elementary school students when or in an inappropriate manner, but it requires that. Let me bring this up. Let's see. It requires that teachers only speak in an age appropriate manner, and that parents must be involved, and that teachers cannot tell uh, students to hide these things from their parents. So I just want to give a shout out to Ron DeSantis of Florida for doing great work, and the legislature there in Florida. There were some more stories that I wanted to get to, but because of technical difficulties, I'm going to end this a little early. as I said before, if you enjoyed this stream, go ahead and give that like button a little tickle. Share the broadcast with someone who needs a quick news update. This is our first broadcast, so I hope to become uh, little less winded, not a little less winded, a little less long winded as I get into this. So hopefully this will be a quick news update that is honest, factual, and to the point. Lastly, leave a comment. Share what you liked, what you didn't like. Do you want to see some more stories? Do you want to see more culture, more politics? Do you want to have some interviews, less fluff? Let me know. And I just want to end by saying, you know, I named the channel Rightward because it is my belief that when you when when life leaves you a little lost, continue rightward.